Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into something that's really making waves in the tech world, this idea of a CERN for AI. It's a pretty big deal. The EU Commission president is really championing this thing.
Okay.
And, it could really shake up where Europe stands in the global AI landscape.
Yeah.
So we've got a pretty thorough report here.
Yeah.
It really gets into, why they think we need this thing, how they're picturing it, and what kind of impact they're hoping to make with it.
Sounds ambitious.
Yeah, it's a big one. So let's just dive right in.
You're right.
So, right off the bat, they're making this direct comparison to CERN.
Right.
The European Organization for Nuclear Research.
Yeah.
And CERN is obviously famous for some pretty big breakthroughs like the World Wide Web.
Right.
So, to even think about AI on that kind of scale, it shows you how seriously the EU is taking this.
Yeah. That's a really bold vision, I think. You know? Drawing that parallel to CERN, it really does speak volumes about their level of commitment to AI.
It definitely sets the bar high.
Right.
And, it's no secret that the EU is leading the charge on AI regulation. Particularly with that EU AI Act.
For sure.
But, when it comes to actual innovation, they're lagging behind. And this report, it doesn't sugarcoat it.
Right.
It really paints this stark picture of what could happen if we don't close that gap.
Yeah, you could imagine a scenario where, groundbreaking applications for healthcare are being developed, but they're being developed somewhere else because Europe just doesn't have the resources.
Right.
That's the reality we could be facing.
Yeah.
Unless we start making some serious moves. And the report, I think, really drives that point home.
So it's not just about catching up at this point.
Right.
This report is saying that Europe needs to build its own powerhouse, like a dedicated institution that's focused on developing what they're calling trustworthy AI.
Exactly. And it's about, shaping the future of AI in a way that reflects European values, right? It's not just about capability, but also about ethics.
Right.
Things like privacy and transparency.
Okay, so how do we even start to catch up when you've got these giants like OpenAI and Microsoft and Google DeepMind? They're already so far ahead. And, the report's big idea here is scale is all you need. What exactly does that mean in this context?
Well, it all comes down to something they're calling the compute divide in this report.
Okay.
Basically just this massive gap in computing resources. Microsoft alone is predicted to have something like 1.8 million AI chips by the end of next year.
Oh, wow.
And then you compare that to the Euro HPC, which is Europe's high-performance computing initiative, and they've only got a combined total of like 32,000. That's more than a 50-fold difference.
Wow. That is a pretty significant gap. It kind of feels like we're bringing a knife to a gunfight here.
Yeah.
So is the EU essentially just saying we need to build our own arsenal and it needs to be packed with the most powerful AI firepower? But it's not just about brute force, right?
Right.
This report seems to be emphasizing a different approach.
Yeah, definitely. They're not saying that a CERN for AI should just copy what American companies are already doing.
Right.
It's more about supporting a range of research approaches that prioritize this idea of trustworthy AI.
So what would that actually look like? What are some concrete examples of this trustworthy AI?
Well, one really promising avenue they highlight is neurosymbolic AI.
Okay.
So imagine combining the power of deep learning with the reasoning capabilities of symbolic AI. That could lead to AI systems that are not only really capable, but also transparent and explainable.
Right.
Think about it for healthcare. You could have medical AI that doctors could actually understand and trust.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about building AI. It's about building AI that we can actually understand and rely on.
Exactly.
Especially in areas as important as healthcare. But attracting the best minds to build this trustworthy AI, that seems like a big hurdle. What does the report say about that?
Well, they actually suggest creating a centralized talent hub.
Okay.
Like a Silicon Valley, but for trustworthy AI. It's about creating an environment that attracts the best and the brightest by offering world-class infrastructure, promoting collaboration, and ultimately becoming the global epicenter for this kind of research.
But wouldn't that risk draining talent from other parts of Europe?
Right.
How do you balance the need for this central hub with the goal of spreading the benefits of this research across the entire EU?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the report acknowledges the whole debate around centralization versus decentralization.
Yeah.
But they make the case that concentrating talent in one spot is actually essential for attracting investment, building a strong research community, and ultimately speeding up innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they see it, while the physical hub would be centralized, the benefits, like the research findings and technological advancements, those could be shared and spread throughout the EU.
Okay, that's an interesting approach. So you create a central hub to attract the best minds, but you make sure the benefits are shared widely. But let's be realistic for a second. This all sounds incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
How does the report address the financial side of this project?
Well, they estimate that just building the infrastructure we need would require a hefty investment of $35 billion.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's comparable to the EU's CHIPS Act, which kind of shows you how seriously they are taking this.
Wow, that is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So where would this funding even come from? Does the report give any specifics about how they plan to finance this CERN for AI?
They suggest a mix of public and private funding, with a really strong emphasis on partnership between governments, research institutions, and private companies.
That makes sense. But bringing private companies into this, I don't know, that raises a bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that the pursuit of profit doesn't end up compromising those ethical considerations? I mean, they're supposed to be at the core of this whole trustworthy AI idea.
You're absolutely right. And the report actually goes into this very issue.
Okay.
They acknowledge those potential conflicts of interest and really stress the need for careful oversight. We don't want trustworthy AI to just become another empty buzzword.
Right.
Yeah, it's not enough to just throw money at the problem.
Right.
We need clear rules, clear mechanisms to make sure those ethical considerations stay front and center. But, private companies, they often focus on those short-term gains.
Right.
So how do we get them to buy into this long-term research?
Right. The research that might not turn a profit right away.
Exactly. Well, one idea the report floats is a shareholder system.
Okay.
Similar to a company where participating nations and private entities would hold shares based on how much they contribute.
Okay.
So that way you not only ensure a fair distribution of the benefits, but you also create a sense of shared ownership and shared responsibility for making CERN for AI a success.
That's pretty interesting. It would definitely give those companies a reason to think long-term and actually contribute to the development of trustworthy AI. Potential downsides. What about security? I mean, creating this centralized hub for all this cutting-edge AI research, doesn't that come with some serious security risks?
That's a real concern, and the report addresses it head-on.
Okay.
They propose this multi-level security structure for CERN, for AI.
Okay.
Introducing this idea of different security levels, or SLs, to guard against everything from individual hackers to nation-state actors.
Yeah.
Think of it like a fortress for AI, with different levels of access, depending on the sensitivity of the research.
It sounds kind of like something out of a spy movie.
Right.
But even with all these security measures, what about open source AI models? How do we balance the need for open research and collaboration with the very real risk of this technology falling into the wrong hands?
That's a really tricky one.
Yeah.
And the report explores a bunch of different scenarios.
Okay.
Sometimes open sourcing AI models could actually accelerate innovation, benefit the whole research community. But then in other cases where the potential for misuse is really high, access might need to be restricted.
Okay.
We have to be careful to prevent those bad actors from getting their hands on these technologies.
So it's a real balancing act, trying to encourage that open research while also minimizing the risks. But how do you even begin to assess the potential dangers of a technology that's changing so fast?
It's a constant challenge.
Yeah.
The report really highlights the need for ongoing risk assessment and making sure our security measures can adapt.
Okay.
They even suggest having a dedicated red team within CERN for AI.
A red team? What would they do?
Basically, they'd play the adversary.
Okay.
Constantly probing for weaknesses in those AI systems, developing strategies to counter any potential threats. Like imagine ethical hackers whose whole job is to find vulnerabilities and make CERN for AI more secure.
Okay, that's pretty fascinating. It's like having your own internal security force constantly testing and strengthening the defenses of this AI fortress. But even with all these security measures, the report also seems to really emphasize the need for international collaboration. Why is that so crucial when it comes to AI development?
Well, because the challenges posed by AI are global challenges.
Right.
No one country, no single institution can solve them alone.
Right.
So the report argues that a CERN for AI should be open to collaboration with other nations, those who share similar values, sharing knowledge, resources, and expertise to make sure we develop and deploy AI responsibly on a global scale.
So it's about building a global community of researchers and policymakers committed to shaping this technology for the better.
Exactly.
But realistically, with all the geopolitical tensions and the competition for AI dominance, is that even feasible?
It's going to take some careful navigation, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And a real commitment to finding common ground. But the report suggests that Europe, with its history of international cooperation and its focus on ethics, is actually in a unique position to lead this effort.
It's certainly a bold vision. But before we jump ahead to the potential impact on the world, let's take a step back and look at the EU's own track record.
Okay.
I mean, when it comes to these large-scale research initiatives, can we really expect them to pull this off? Does history give us any reason to be optimistic?
That's a great question. And, the report actually draws this really interesting parallel to the creation of the original CERN.
Ah, yes. The birthplace of the World Wide Web. But wasn't that a very different time, a very different context? I mean, how can we compare that to building a CERN for AI today?
Well, while the specific context might be different, the underlying principles are surprisingly similar.
Okay.
Right after World War II, Europe was facing these huge challenges, politically and economically. But even in the midst of all that, you had these visionary leaders who came together with this bold idea to create this world-class research institution, to foster scientific collaboration, to push the boundaries of human knowledge.
It was a symbol of unity, a beacon of hope for a continent that was struggling to rebuild. And ultimately, it led to one of the most transformative technologies in history, the World Wide Web.
Exactly. And just like CERN back then, a CERN for AI today, it represents this bold bet on the future. It's a recognition that Europe's strength lies in its ability to collaborate, to innovate, to shape the world through science and technology.
So it's not just about catching up with the US and China. It's about Europe reclaiming its position as a global leader. But this time in the field of AI.
Exactly.
But to really understand the significance of this, we need to dive into one of the most fundamental questions about AI. What does it actually mean to develop trustworthy AI?
That's really at the heart of everything we're talking about. And the report offers some really interesting insights. They really emphasize transparency, making sure those AI systems can be explained and their decision-making processes are understandable. They also highlight fairness, making sure those systems don't perpetuate biases or discriminate.
So it's about building AI that's not just capable, but also ethical.
Absolutely.
Equitable.
Yes.
And accountable.
And accountable.
It's about making sure that AI actually reflects our values and serves humanity. But how do you translate those abstract principles into concrete guidelines and mechanisms for actually developing AI?
That's where the report gets really interesting. They go beyond just stating principles and dive into specific approaches for building trustworthy AI. They talk about things like ensuring data privacy, promoting algorithmic transparency, and developing ways for humans to oversee these AI systems.
So you're talking about embedding these ethical considerations into every step of AI development, from the design of algorithms to the way we train those algorithms with data. But how do you actually enforce these ethical standards, especially in a global landscape where AI development is moving so quickly?
It's a tough question. The report argues that regulations alone aren't enough. It's going to take a multi-pronged approach. Regulations, ethical guidelines, industry standards, and public education.
So it's about creating a culture of responsible AI development, where ethics isn't just an afterthought, but a core part of the process. But who would actually be responsible for setting those standards and making sure everyone follows them?
Well, the report suggests that a CERN for AI, with its focus on trustworthy AI and democratic oversight, could really take the lead.
Okay.
Imagine an institution that's not only doing cutting-edge research,
Yeah.
but also developing ethical guidelines, promoting best practices, and fostering international collaboration on AI governance.
That would be a significant shift from the current situation where AI development is mostly driven by private companies pursuing their own commercial interests.
Yeah.
But is the EU really willing to take that on, to champion a more ethical, more human-centered approach to AI on a global scale?
That's the big question.
Right.
And only time will tell. But the fact that they're even having this discussion, exploring these ideas, that's a hopeful sign. It suggests that Europe recognizes both the transformative potential of AI and the potential risks, and the need for careful, thoughtful development.
It's certainly a bold and ambitious vision, but let's not forget about the elephant in the room, the cost. Building a CERN for AI would require a massive investment.
Absolutely.
And with Europe facing its own economic challenges right now, is this really the right time for such an ambitious undertaking?
Well, the report doesn't shy away from the financial realities.
Okay.
They estimate that building the necessary infrastructure would require a substantial investment of $35 billion.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, that's comparable to the EU's CHIPS Act, which really highlights how seriously they're taking this initiative.
Wow, that's a significant chunk of change. So where would this funding come from? Does the report lay out any specific plans for financing a CERN for AI?
They propose a mix of public and private funding, recognizing that a project of this magnitude would demand a truly collaborative effort.
Okay.
They envision a partnership model where governments, research institutions, and private companies all contribute, both financially and intellectually.
That makes sense. Pooling resources from multiple sources to share the burden.
Yeah.
But, and I know we touched on this earlier, involving private companies always raises concerns about conflicts of interest.
For sure.
And the potential for profits to overshadow those ethical considerations that are supposed to be at the heart of this trustworthy AI. How does the report address that tension?
That's a crucial point, and the report tackles it head on.
Okay.
They propose a governance structure that's designed to guarantee transparency and accountability. They imagine a board of directors with representatives from governments, research institutions, and private companies, all working together with a clear mandate to prioritize the ethical development and use of AI.
Okay, that sounds like a good starting point. But how do you prevent that board from becoming just another layer of bureaucracy?
Right.
Or even worse, being dominated by the interests of just one group, whether it's governments or corporations?
They suggest implementing a system of checks and balances with clear procedures for resolving disputes and making sure everyone's voice is heard.
Okay.
They also propose setting up an independent ethics review board to provide impartial oversight, guaranteeing that those ethical considerations stay at the forefront.
That sounds like a pretty solid framework for governance.
Yeah.
But even with the best intentions and the most carefully designed systems, you can't eliminate the risk of human error or unforeseen events. How does the report account for the possibility of things going wrong, whether intentionally or unintentionally?
They emphasize the importance of creating a culture of responsibility and accountability within CERN for AI.
Okay.
Implementing strict ethical guidelines, conducting regular risk assessments, and establishing clear mechanisms for whistleblowing and independent audits.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the people involved. Fostering that culture of responsibility and recognizing that security is an ongoing process, not a one-time fix. But even if we create a secure environment for AI research, how do we guarantee that the knowledge and technologies coming out of CERN for AI are used for good and not for harmful purposes?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And the report really digs into this complex issue by highlighting something called dual-use considerations.
Okay.
They acknowledge that AI research can be used for both good and bad.
Right.
So they're suggesting a multi-layered security structure for CERN, for AI.
Okay.
And they're also proposing different security levels, or SLs,
right,
to protect against everything from individual hackers to, to threats from entire nation states. Think of it like a fortress for AI, with different levels of access and clearances, depending on how sensitive the research and data is.
It sounds like something straight out of a Splay movie.
Right. But even with all that security in place, there's still the whole issue of open source AI models. How do you balance that need for open research and collaboration with the risk of this technology getting into the wrong hands? That's a really complex question. And the report dives into a bunch of different scenarios.
Yeah.
Sometimes open sourcing those AI models could really speed up innovation, benefit the entire research community.
Right.
But in other cases where the potential for misuse is high, we might have to restrict access.
Okay.
Be much more careful to prevent those bad actors from exploiting those technologies.
So it's a delicate balancing act for sure,
Yeah.
trying to promote that openness while also being very aware of the risks involved. But how do you even start to assess the potential dangers of a technology that's evolving so rapidly?
That's a constant challenge.
Yeah.
And the report really stresses the need for ongoing risk assessment and adaptive security measures.
Okay.
They even suggest creating a dedicated red team within CERN for AI.
A red team. What would their role be?
They'd basically be ethical hackers. Their whole job is to find weaknesses in those AI systems, to challenge those assumptions, and to push the boundaries of AI security.
That's a really fascinating concept. It's having your own internal security force constantly testing and strengthening the defenses of this AI fortress. But even with all of these security measures in place, the report also seems to emphasize the importance of international collaboration. Why is that so critical in the context of AI development?
Because the challenges AI presents are global.
Right.
No single country, no single institution can tackle them alone.
That's true.
The report argues that a CERN for AI needs to be open to collaborating with like-minded nations, sharing knowledge, resources, expertise, all to ensure that AI is developed and deployed responsibly on a global scale.
So it's about fostering a global community of researchers and policymakers all working together to guide this technology in the right direction.
Exactly.
But realistically, with all the geopolitical tensions and the race for AI dominance, is that even possible?
It's definitely going to require a lot of careful diplomacy and a real commitment to finding that common ground.
Yeah.
The report suggests that Europe, with its strong history of international cooperation and its focus on ethical AI development,
Right.
could actually be in a unique position to lead this global effort.
It's certainly a bold vision. But before we get too carried away thinking about global impact, let's step back for a moment and consider the EU's track record. When it comes to these large-scale research initiatives, can we really expect them to pull this off? Does history give us any reason to be optimistic?
That's a great question. The report makes a really interesting comparison to the creation of CERN back in the 1950s.
Ah, yes. CERN, the original.
Right.
The birthplace of the World Wide Web.
Exactly.
But wasn't that a very different time, a very different context? How can we really draw parallels between that and building a CERN for AI today?
The context may have changed, but the core principles, they're surprisingly similar.
Okay.
After World War II, Europe was facing immense challenges, politically and economically.
Right.
But even then, you had these visionary leaders who came together with this bold idea to create a world-class research institution, to foster scientific collaboration, and to really push the boundaries of human knowledge.
It was a symbol of unity.
Absolutely.
A beacon of hope for a continent struggling to rebuild. And ultimately, it led to one of the most transformative innovations in human history, the World Wide Web.
Exactly. And just like CERN in the 50s, a CERN for AI today represents this huge bet on the future. It's acknowledging that Europe's strength really lies in collaboration, innovation, and shaping the world through science and technology.
So it's not just about catching up with the US and China.
Right.
It's about Europe stepping back into a leadership role on the global stage, but this time in the realm of AI.
Exactly.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, we really need to address one of the most fundamental questions about AI. What does it actually mean to develop trustworthy AI?
That's really the heart of this whole discussion.
Yeah.
And the report, luckily, offers some pretty insightful answers.
Okay, good.
They emphasize transparency, making sure those AI systems are explainable, that their decision-making processes are something we can understand.
Okay.
They also highlight the importance of fairness, making sure those AI systems don't perpetuate biases or discriminate against certain groups.
So it's about building AI that's not just capable, but also ethical.
Absolutely.
Equitable.
Yes.
Accountable.
Accountable.
It's about ensuring that AI reflects our values and serves humanity. But how do you translate those abstract principles into actual concrete guidelines and mechanisms for developing AI? How do you make sure that happens?
Well, that's where the report gets really interesting.
Okay.
It goes beyond just stating ethical principles and actually delves into specific approaches for building trustworthy AI.
Okay.
They talk about things like guaranteeing data privacy, promoting algorithmic transparency, and actually establishing ways for humans to oversee these AI systems.
So you're saying it's about embedding those ethical considerations into every single step of AI development.
Exactly.
From how we design the algorithms to the data that's used to train them.
Absolutely.
But how do you enforce those ethical standards, especially in a global landscape where AI development is happening so rapidly?
Yeah, it's a big question.
Right.
And the report argues that just relying on regulations isn't going to cut it. It's going to take a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
You need regulations, but you also need ethical guidelines.
Right.
You need industry standards, and you need public education.
So it's about building a culture.
Exactly.
A culture of responsible AI development where those ethical considerations aren't just an afterthought, they're baked into every step of the process.
Absolutely.
But who would be responsible for setting those standards and making sure everybody's playing by the rules?
Well, the report suggests that a CERN for AI, with its focus on trustworthy AI and its commitment to democratic oversight, could really play a leading role in this.
Okay, I see. So imagine an institution that isn't just focused on cutting-edge research, but also on developing ethical guidelines, promoting best practices, and encouraging international collaboration when it comes to governing AI.
Exactly.
That would be a significant shift from the current situation, where AI development is largely driven by private companies pursuing their own commercial interests.
It would be.
But is the EU really willing to step up and champion a more ethical, more human-centered approach to AI development on a global scale?
Well, only time will tell.
Right.
But the very fact that they're having this conversation, that they're seriously exploring these ideas, it gives me some hope. It suggests they recognize both the immense potential of AI and the potential risks and the need for careful and responsible development.
It's a bold and ambitious vision, that's for sure. But let's not forget about the elephant in the room here.
Okay.
The financial implications. I mean, building a CERN for AI, that would be a massive investment.
It would.
And, you know, with Europe facing its own economic challenges right now, is this really the right time to take on such a massive project?
Well, the report doesn't shy away from their financial realities.
Okay.
They estimate that building all the necessary infrastructure would require something like 35 billion.
Wow.
To put that in context, that's comparable to the EU's CHIPS Act, which really shows you how committed they are to this initiative.
Wow, that's a lot of money. So where would this funding even come from? Does the report lay out any specific plans for actually financing a CERN for AI?
They propose a mix of public and private funding.
Okay.
Recognizing that a project this big would require a real collaborative effort.
Right.
They envision a partnership model where governments, research institutions, and private companies all chip in, both financially and intellectually.
That makes sense. Pooling resources from different sources to help spread the financial burden.
Yeah.
But, and I know we've talked about this before, whenever you bring private companies into the mix, it raises concerns about conflicts of interest.
Ideally.
I mean, how do you make sure that the pursuit of profit doesn't end up overshadowing those ethical considerations that are supposed to be at the heart of trustworthy AI?
You've hit on a really crucial point, and the report actually addresses this directly.
Okay, good.
They propose setting up a governance structure that's specifically designed to ensure transparency and accountability. They envision a board of directors made up of representatives from governments, research institutions, and private companies.
Okay.
All working together with a clear mandate to put ethical development and the use of AI first.
Okay, that sounds like a good starting point. But how do you prevent that board from becoming just another layer of bureaucracy?
Right.
Or even worse, being dominated by the interests of one particular group, whether that's governments or corporations?
That's a valid concern.
What?
They suggest putting a system of checks and balances in place.
Okay.
So you'd have clear procedures for resolving disputes and ensuring that everybody has a voice at the table.
Right.
They also propose setting up an independent ethics review board to provide objective oversight. You know, that way you can guarantee those ethical considerations stay front and center.
That does sound like a pretty solid framework for governance.
Yeah.
But even with the best intentions and the most carefully designed systems, you can never completely eliminate the risk of human error or those unforeseen events, right?
Right.
I mean, how does the report account for the possibility of things going wrong, either accidentally or intentionally?
They emphasize the importance of building a culture of responsibility and accountability within CERN for AI.
Okay.
Implementing strict ethical guidelines, conducting regular risk assessments, establishing clear mechanisms for whistleblowing and independent audits.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the people involved, right?
Yes.
Fostering a culture of responsibility and recognizing that security is an ongoing process, not just a one-time fix. But even if you create a secure environment for the research, how do we ensure that the knowledge and the technologies that come out of CERN for AI are actually used for good? How do we prevent them from being used for harmful purposes?
That's the million-dollar question, and the report digs deep into this very issue.
Okay.
They talk about the importance of considering the potential for dual use. They acknowledge that AI research has applications that can be both beneficial and potentially harmful.
So it's about recognizing that AI is a powerful tool that can be used for both good and bad.
Exactly.
And we need to put safeguards in place to make sure it's used responsibly.
Absolutely.
But how do you even define those safeguards when the potential applications of AI are so vast and constantly evolving?
It's a moving target, for sure. The report stresses the need for continuous ethical assessments and oversight throughout the entire AI development process. They even suggest setting up a dedicated ethics review board within CERN for AI.
And what would their role be?
Well, they'd be tasked with evaluating the potential societal impact of each research project.
Okay.
Making sure ethical considerations are prioritized at every single stage of development.
That sounds like a critical step towards ensuring AI benefits humanity and isn't used against us.
I agree.
But who would actually sit on this ethics review board? Would it be composed entirely of scientists and engineers, or would it include perspectives from other fields like philosophy, law, or social sciences?
The report suggests taking a multidisciplinary approach, recognizing that ethical considerations in AI require input from a wide range of perspectives.
Yeah.
They envision an ethics review board made up of experts from various fields, including the ones you mentioned, to ensure a comprehensive and well-informed assessment of the potential impact of AI research.
That makes a lot of sense. Bringing together diverse voices and perspectives to grapple with the complex ethical challenges posed by AI.
Right.
But even with the best intentions and the most robust ethical frameworks, there's always the possibility of unintended consequences. How do you anticipate and mitigate those potential negative impacts of AI research that you might not even see coming?
It's a tough one, but the report emphasizes the importance of ongoing monitoring and evaluation of those AI systems once they're actually out there in the real world.
Okay.
They propose establishing mechanisms for collecting feedback, not just from the users, but also from stakeholders and the general public. That way you can identify potential issues early on and make adjustments as needed.
Yeah, so you're talking about building a feedback loop, a system where we're constantly learning and adapting to ensure those AI technologies are evolving in a way that aligns with our values and serves the best interests of humanity.
Precisely.
But even with those safeguards in place, there's still that element of uncertainty, that possibility that AI research could lead to outcomes we never anticipated, both good and bad. How do we reconcile that uncertainty with the need to move forward with AI development?
It's a constant tension in any technological advancement. The report acknowledges that tension. They suggest a cautious but optimistic approach, one that embraces AI's potential while staying aware of those potential risks.
So it's about finding that balance, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI while also proceeding with humility and a sense of responsibility, recognizing that we don't have all the answers and there's always more to learn.
Exactly.
But before we get too deep into those philosophical considerations, let's take a closer look at the practical side of building a CERN for AI. I mean, what would such an institution actually look like?
The report paints a pretty vivid picture.
Okay.
They imagine a sprawling research campus, cutting-edge laboratories, collaborative workspaces designed to spark innovation and encourage cross-disciplinary collaboration.
It sounds like an AI researcher's dream, but it also sounds incredibly expensive. I mean, how does the report address the financial realities of building and maintaining such a sophisticated facility?
They estimate the total cost to be somewhere between 30 and 35 billion spread out over a number of years.
Wow.
To put that into perspective, it's comparable to other major EU initiatives, like the CHIPS Act, which shows you the scale of their commitment.
Wow, that is a lot of money. So where would all of this funding come from? Does the report give any specific details about how they plan to finance a CERN for AI?
They propose a mix of public and private funding,
Okay.
recognizing that a project of this magnitude would require a collaborative effort.
Right.
They envision a partnership model where governments, research institutions, and private companies all contribute, both financially and intellectually, to the success of CERN for AI.
That makes sense. Pooling resources from different sources would definitely help to share the load.
Right.
But as we discussed earlier, involving private companies always raises those concerns about conflicts of interest.
Absolutely.
How do you make sure that the pursuit of profit doesn't end up compromising those ethical considerations that are supposed to be at the very core of trustworthy AI?
You're right to raise that concern, and the report actually delves into this very issue.
Okay, good.
They propose establishing a governance structure that ensures transparency and accountability in all decision-making processes. They envision a board of directors made up of representatives from those participating governments, research institutions, and those private companies,
Okay.
with a clear mandate to put ethical AI development and deployment front and center.
Okay, that sounds like a solid starting point. But how do you prevent that board from getting bogged down in bureaucracy?
Right.
Or even worse, being dominated by the interests of a single group, whether that's the governments or the corporations?
That's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
They suggest a system of checks and balances,
Okay.
with clear mechanisms for resolving disputes and making sure all those voices are heard and considered.
Yeah.
They also propose setting up an independent ethics review board
Okay.
to provide objective oversight and ensure those ethical considerations aren't sidelined.
That sounds like a pretty robust governance framework. But even with the best intentions and carefully designed structures, you can't completely eliminate the risk of human error
Of course not.
or unforeseen events.
Right.
So how does the report account for the possibility of things going wrong, whether intentionally or not?
Well, they emphasize the importance of creating a culture of responsibility and accountability within CERN for AI,
Okay.
implementing strict ethical guidelines, conducting regular risk assessments, and establishing those clear mechanisms for whistleblowing and independent audits.
So it's not just about the technology, but about the people using it, right?
Exactly.
It's about fostering a culture of responsibility and understanding that security is an ongoing process, not just a one-time fix.
Right.
But even if we manage to create a secure environment for that AI research, how can we be sure that the knowledge and technologies that come out of CERN for AI are used for the right reasons? I mean, how do we prevent them from being used for harmful purposes?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the report goes into this in depth. They emphasize the need to consider dual use.
Okay.
They acknowledge that AI research can have both positive and negative applications.
Right. It's a powerful tool that can be used in many ways.
Absolutely.
So we need to be careful about how it's developed and deployed.
Exactly.
But how do you even begin to define those safeguards when the potential applications of AI are so vast and constantly changing?
It's a moving target, for sure. The report emphasizes the importance of ongoing, continuous ethical assessment
Okay.
and oversight throughout that whole AI development lifecycle. They even suggest establishing a dedicated ethics review board within CERN for AI.
Okay. And what would their role be specifically?
They would be responsible for evaluating the potential societal impact of each and every research project,
Okay.
making sure ethical considerations are front and center at every stage of the development process.
That sounds like a really crucial step in ensuring AI is used to benefit humanity rather than harm it. But who would actually sit on this ethics review board? I mean, would it be composed entirely of scientists and engineers, or would it include people from other fields, like philosophers, lawyers, or social scientists?
Well, the report suggests taking a multidisciplinary approach,
Okay.
recognizing that ethical considerations in AI require input from a diverse set of perspectives.
Yeah.
They envision an ethics review board made up of experts from various fields, including those you just mentioned. That way, they can ensure a really comprehensive and well-informed assessment of the potential impact of any AI research that's done.
That makes sense. You need those diverse voices, those different perspectives to really grapple with the complex ethical challenges that AI presents.
Exactly.
But even with the best intentions and the most carefully designed ethical frameworks, you can never fully eliminate the risk of unintended consequences, right?
It's true.
How do you anticipate and try to mitigate those potential negative impacts of AI research, those things you don't even see coming?
That's a really tough question. The report emphasizes the importance of continuous monitoring and evaluation of those AI systems.
Okay.
Once they're actually out there in the real world.
Right.
They propose establishing mechanisms for collecting feedback from users, stakeholders, the public, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That way, you can hopefully catch potential issues early on and make those necessary adjustments.
So you're talking about creating a feedback loop, a system of constant learning and adapting to make sure AI technologies are evolving in a way that aligns with our values.
Exactly.
And serves the best interests of humanity.
Precisely.
But even with those safeguards in place, there's still a degree of uncertainty, a chance that AI research could lead to outcomes we hadn't foreseen,
Right.
both good and bad. How do you reconcile that uncertainty with the need to keep pushing forward with AI development?
It's a fundamental tension that comes with any new technology.
Right.
That sense of the unknown. The report recognizes this, and they advocate for a cautious but optimistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
Embrace the potential, but always be mindful of the risks.
So proceed with a sense of humility,
Absolutely.
recognizing that we don't have all the answers and there's always more to learn.
Exactly.
But before we delve too deeply into those philosophical considerations, let's zoom back in on the practicalities of actually building a CERN for AI.
Oh.
I mean, what would such an institution actually look like in real life?
Well, the report actually paints a pretty vivid picture.
Okay, good.
They talk about a sprawling research campus, state-of-the-art computing infrastructure,
Yeah,
cutting-edge labs,
right.
collaborative workspaces designed specifically to encourage innovation and that cross-disciplinary exchange of ideas.
It sounds like a dream come true for any AI researcher.
It does.
But it also sounds incredibly expensive. How does the report deal with the financial realities of actually building and maintaining such a sophisticated facility?
They estimate that the total cost would be somewhere between 30 and 35 billion.
Wow.
And this cost would be spread out over several years, of course.
Okay. But to give you some context, that's comparable to some of the EU's other major initiatives, like the CHIPS Act. It really highlights how seriously they're taking this.
That is a significant amount of money.
It is.
So where would this funding come from? Does the report lay out specific plans for finding a CERN for AI?
They propose a mix of public and private funding.
Okay.
They recognize that a project of this scale would absolutely require a collaborative approach.
Right.
They envision a partnership model where governments, research institutions, and private companies all contribute, both in terms of financial resources and intellectual capital.
That makes sense. You'd need to pool resources from multiple sources to make something like this work.
Definitely.
But, and we've touched on this point before, anytime you bring private companies into the picture, it inevitably raises concerns about those potential conflicts of interest.
Of course. I mean, how do you guarantee that the pursuit of profit doesn't end up undermining those ethical considerations, the ones that are supposed to be at the very core of this trustworthy AI?
It's a valid concern, and the report addresses it head on.
Okay, good.
They suggest establishing a governance structure that prioritizes transparency and accountability in the decision-making process. They picture a board of directors made up of representatives from those participating governments, research institutions, and yes, the private companies too.
Okay.
But with a clear and unwavering mandate to prioritize ethical AI development and deployment.
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable starting point. But how do you prevent this board from becoming just another bureaucratic entity, or worse, being swayed by the interests of one particular group?
Right.
Whether that's the governments or the corporations.
That's a fair point. They propose a system of checks and balances to address that.
Okay.
You'd need clear procedures for resolving disagreements and ensuring that everyone has a voice and can be heard. And to add another layer of protection, they also suggest setting up an independent ethics review board.
Okay. And what would they do?
They would provide completely objective oversight.
Okay.
That way, you can be confident that those ethical considerations are always front and center.
That does sound like a pretty robust framework for governance. But even with the best intentions, the most carefully designed systems, You can never completely eliminate human error or unforeseen circumstances.
That's true.
How does the report address the possibility of things going wrong, whether it's intentional or accidental?
Well, they stress the need to foster a culture of responsibility and accountability at every level of CERN for AI.
Okay.
This means implementing strict ethical guidelines, conducting regular risk assessments, and establishing clear procedures for whistleblowing and independent audits.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the people who are developing and using it, right?
Exactly. You need to build a culture of responsibility.
Right, where everyone understands that security is an ongoing effort, not just a one-time fix.
Precisely.
But let's say we do manage to create that secure environment for AI research. How do we guarantee that the knowledge and the technologies that come out of CERN for AI are actually used for the right reasons? I mean, how do you prevent them from being used for harmful purposes?
That's the million-euro question, and the report delves into this very issue.
Okay.
They highlight the concept of dual use,
Okay.
acknowledging that AI research can have both beneficial and harmful applications.
Right. Like any powerful tool, it can be used in many ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to be really thoughtful about how we develop and deploy it.
But how do you even start to define those safeguards when the potential applications of AI are so incredibly diverse and are evolving at such a rapid pace?
It's a moving target, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The report stresses the importance of continuous ethical assessments and oversight.
Okay.
And this needs to happen throughout the entire development life cycle of AI. They even suggest setting up a dedicated ethics review board within CERN for AI.
Okay, and what would that board be responsible for?
They'd be tasked with evaluating the potential societal impact of every single research project.
Okay.
They'd make sure ethical considerations are prioritized at every single stage of the development process.
That sounds like a really important step to make sure that AI is being used to benefit humanity rather than to harm it.
Absolutely.
But who would sit on this ethics review board? Would it just be composed of scientists and engineers? Or would it include people from other areas, like philosophy, law, or the social sciences?
The report recommends a multidisciplinary approach.
Okay, that makes sense.
They recognize that ethical considerations in AI require input from a wide range of viewpoints.
Yeah.
So they envision an ethics review board comprised of experts from various fields, including the ones you just mentioned, to make sure they can fully assess the potential impact of the research.
Right, because you need those diverse voices, those different perspectives, to really grapple with the complex ethical challenges that come with AI.
Exactly.
But even with all the good intentions, even with the most carefully designed ethical frameworks, there's always the possibility of unintended consequences.
Of course.
I mean, how do you anticipate and mitigate those potential negative impacts of AI research, those things you don't even see coming?
It's a tough question, a constant challenge.
Yeah.
The report emphasizes the importance of ongoing monitoring and evaluation of those AI systems once they're actually out in the real world.
Right.
They suggest establishing systems for gathering feedback.
Okay.
Not just from the users, but from stakeholders, the general public, everyone.
Right.
That way, they can hopefully catch potential problems early on.
Right.
And make adjustments before those problems get out of hand.
So you're talking about creating a feedback loop, a system of continuous learning and adaptation, right?
Yes.
Making sure that AI technologies are always evolving in a way that aligns with our values. Exactly.
And serves the best interests of humanity.
That's the goal.
But even with all of those safeguards in place, there's still that element of uncertainty, that possibility that AI research could lead to outcomes, both positive and negative, that we hadn't anticipated.
Right.
How do we reconcile that uncertainty with the need to move forward with AI development?
It's a tension inherent in any new technology, that fear of the unknown. The report acknowledges that tension.
Okay.
They advocate for a balanced approach. Cautious, but optimistic. Embrace AI's potential, but always be mindful of the risks involved.
So proceed with a sense of humility, recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that there's always more to learn.
Exactly.
But before we get too deep into those philosophical considerations, let's bring our focus back to the practical aspects of building a CERN for AI.
Okay.
What would such an institution actually look like in the real world?
Well, the report does a great job of painting a picture.
Okay, good. They talk about a sprawling research campus, cutting-edge laboratories, state-of-the-art computing infrastructure.
Wow.
And they envision collaborative workspaces that are designed to foster innovation and that free flow of ideas between different disciplines.
That sounds amazing. I mean, it sounds like a dream for anyone working in AI research.
It does.
But let's be realistic, it also sounds incredibly expensive. How does the report address the financial realities of building and maintaining such a sophisticated facility?
Well, they estimate the total cost to be in the range of 30 to 35 billion, spread out over several years.
Wow, that's a serious commitment.
It is, and to put that into perspective, it's comparable to some of the EU's other major initiatives like the CHIPS Act.
Right.
It really underscores how much they are prioritizing this.
So where would this funding come from? Does the report offer any specific plans for actually financing a CERN for AI?
They propose a combination of public and private funding.
Okay.
They acknowledge that a project of this magnitude would definitely require contributions from a variety of sources.
Makes sense.
So they envision a partnership model where governments, research institutions, and private companies would all have a role to play, both financially and intellectually.
That makes a lot of sense. Pooling resources from different sources would definitely be necessary to make something like this happen.
Definitely.
But, as we've discussed before, bringing private companies into the equation always raises concerns about potential conflicts of interest.
Of course.
How do you make sure that the pursuit of profit doesn't end up overshadowing the ethical considerations that are supposed to be at the very heart of trustworthy AI?
That's a crucial question. And the report tackles it head on by proposing a governance structure that's designed to prioritize transparency and accountability. They envision a board of directors comprised of representatives from the participating governments, research institutions, and those private companies.
Okay.
But with a clear mandate to place ethical considerations at the forefront of AI development and deployment.
Okay, that's a solid start. But how do you prevent that board from just becoming another layer of bureaucracy?
Right.
Or worse, getting hijacked by the interests of a particular group, whether it's the governments or the corporations?
That's a valid concern, and the report suggests implementing a system of checks and balances to address that.
Okay, so what would that look like in practice?
Well, you'd need clear procedures for resolving disagreements and ensuring that everyone involved has a voice at the table and that their concerns are taken seriously.
Right.
And for added protection, they also propose creating an independent ethics review board.
Okay. And what would that board be responsible for?
They would provide objective oversight,
Okay.
ensuring that those ethical considerations are never sidelined.
That does sound like a fairly robust framework for governance.
It is.
But even with the best intentions and the most carefully designed systems, you can never fully eliminate human error or unforeseen events.
That's true.
So how does the report address the possibility of things going wrong, whether it's accidental or intentional?
They stress the importance of establishing a culture of responsibility and accountability within CERN for AI from the very beginning.
Okay, so what does that mean in practice?
It means having strict ethical guidelines, conducting those regular risk assessments, and establishing clear procedures for whistleblowing and independent audits.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the people involved, fostering a culture of responsibility.
Precisely.
And recognizing that security is an ongoing effort, not a one-time fix.
Absolutely.
But even if we succeed in creating this secure environment for AI research, how do we guarantee that the knowledge and the technologies that come out of CERN for AI are actually used for good? How do you prevent those from being used for harmful purposes?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something the report really grapples with.
Okay.
They highlight the importance of considering what they call dual-use applications.
Okay.
Basically acknowledging that AI research can have applications that are both beneficial and potentially harmful.
Right. It's a powerful tool that could be used in many different ways.
Exactly. So we have to be very careful about how we develop and how we ultimately deploy it.
But how do you define those safeguards when the potential applications of AI are so diverse, so vast, and constantly evolving? It's a moving target, isn't it?
It is, definitely. That's why the report stresses the need for ongoing ethical assessment and oversight.
Okay.
Throughout that entire life cycle of AI development, they even suggest creating a dedicated ethics review board within CERN for AI.
Okay, I see. And what exactly would this board be responsible for?
Well, They would be tasked with evaluating the potential societal impact of every research project.
Okay.
They'd ensure that ethical considerations are front and center at each stage of the development process.
Okay, that sounds like a really critical step in ensuring that AI is developed and used in a way that benefits humanity and doesn't end up being used against us.
It is.
But who would actually be on this ethics review board? Would it be comprised entirely of scientists and engineers? Or would it also include people from other fields like philosophy, law, and social sciences?
Well, the report suggests a multidisciplinary approach.
Okay, that makes sense.
Recognizing that ethical considerations in AI require input from a diverse range of perspectives.
Yeah.
They envision an ethics review board with experts from various fields, including the ones you just mentioned,
Right.
to make sure they can do a really comprehensive assessment of the potential impact of the research.
Right, you need those diverse voices.
Yes.
Those different perspectives to grapple with the complex ethical challenges that come with AI.
Absolutely.
But even with the best intentions in the world and the most carefully designed ethical frameworks, you can never completely eliminate the risk of unintended consequences, right?
Unfortunately, no.
I mean, how do you anticipate and try to mitigate those potential negative impacts of AI research, the things you don't even see coming?
It's a tough challenge.
Yeah.
The report really emphasizes the importance of constant monitoring and evaluation of AI systems once they're actually out there operating in the real world.
Okay.
They propose putting mechanisms in place to gather feedback from users, stakeholders, the public, really everyone who's impacted.
So you're talking about a system of continuous learning and adaptation, right? Making sure AI keeps evolving in a way that benefits us all.
Yeah, exactly.
But even with those systems in place, there's always that bit of uncertainty, isn't there? That chance that the research leads to outcomes we didn't anticipate, good or bad.
That's the nature of any new technology, right? That fear of the unknown. The report acknowledges this.
Oh.
They recommend a balanced approach. Cautious but optimistic. Embracing AI's potential, but always with an eye on those risks.
So moving forward with a healthy dose of humility, recognizing we don't have all the answers and there's always more to learn.
Exactly.
But before we get too lost in the philosophy of it all, let's come back down to earth and talk about the people who would actually be making this vision a reality. We've talked about the benefits and risks of AI, the ethics, the funding, and the importance of global cooperation. But ultimately, it all comes down to the individuals involved, right? Who are these people? What kind of expertise and leadership will be needed to guide this ambitious project?
The report actually dedicates a whole section to human capital. They recognize that CERN for AI lives or dies by the people involved, attracting, retaining, and empowering the best and brightest minds in the field.
So it's not just about building state-of-the-art facilities and buying the latest equipment. It's about finding the right people.
Absolutely.
The visionaries, the innovators, the ones who can not only push the boundaries of research, but also navigate the ethical and societal implications of this technology.
That's it, exactly. They highlight the need for a wide range of expertise, not just in the technical fields like computer science and engineering, but also ethics, philosophy, law, economics, social sciences, the whole spectrum. They envision CERN for AI as this truly interdisciplinary hub where experts from all these different backgrounds can come together, share knowledge, and collaborate on solving some of humanity's biggest challenges.
It sounds like they're trying to create a kind of intellectual melting pot, a place where ideas from different fields can mix and spark new discoveries and innovations.
That's the idea.
But if you have so many brilliant minds concentrated in one place, wouldn't that also create the potential for competition and rivalry? I mean, how do you prevent ego clashes and intellectual property disputes from undermining the whole collaborative spirit?
That's a valid concern, and the report addresses it head on. They propose several strategies for creating a culture of collaboration and respect. Things like setting clear guidelines for intellectual property, really promoting teamwork and knowledge sharing, and creating a system that not only recognizes individual contributions, but also celebrates those collective achievements.
So it's about striking that balance, right?
Yeah.
Between individual ambition and that shared sense of purpose, recognizing that those big breakthroughs often come from people working together, sharing their ideas.
Exactly. Collaboration is key.
But even with carefully designed policies and a supportive environment, there's always a chance that things could go wrong. I mean, how does the report deal with the potential for ethical lapses? Researchers cutting corners or pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable, all in the name of scientific progress.
They're very aware of that risk, And they stress the importance of integrating ethics into every single aspect of CERN for AI.
Okay.
From the initial research design to how those AI systems are actually used in the real world, they propose setting up a robust system for ethical oversight, ethics review boards, mandatory ethics training for everyone working there, clear procedures for reporting any potential violations. The whole 9 yards.
So building that culture of ethical awareness and accountability, where everyone understands the importance of responsible AI development and feels comfortable speaking up if they see something that's not right.
Right. It's about creating an environment where ethics isn't just a box to check, but a fundamental part of everything they do.
That's really important. But even with the best intentions and the strongest safeguards in place, there's always the risk of unintended consequences.
Of course.
AI systems behaving in ways we hadn't predicted, potentially causing harm or making existing inequalities even worse. How does the report propose to handle that challenge?
Well, they highlight the importance of continuous monitoring and evaluation once those AI systems are actually deployed in the real world.
Okay.
Collecting data on their performance, how they impact society, looking for any signs of unintended consequences.
Right, so constantly assessing the situation and making sure things are moving in the right direction.
Exactly.
But with all this talk about potential risks and uncertainties, some people might be wondering, why even bother with this whole CERN for AI idea? Wouldn't it be easier and less risky to just stick with the status quo and let private companies continue leading the way in AI development? Why take on such a massive and complex endeavor?
The report argues that the stakes are simply too high to leave AI development solely in the hands of private companies. Those companies are often driven by profit, which doesn't always align with ethical considerations or what's best for society as a whole.
Right.
They see CERN for AI as a kind of counterbalance to that, a public institution that's dedicated to developing AI for the benefit of humanity.
So it's about creating a different kind of AI ecosystem, one that's driven by a public mission, not just private profit.
Exactly. And one that prioritizes those ethical considerations and societal benefits. One that encourages collaboration and knowledge sharing instead of competition and secrecy.
That's a powerful vision. But even if the EU is successful in creating this idealistic research hub, wouldn't there still be a risk of competition or even conflict with other countries pursuing their own AI agendas? I mean, how do you prevent CERN for AI from becoming just another pawn in the global AI arms race?
The report acknowledges the geopolitical realities of the AI landscape. They know AI is a strategic priority for many nations, and there's definitely a sense of competition out there.
Yeah, it feels like every country wants to be the leader in AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they believe CERN for AI could actually help to foster international cooperation and collaboration, creating a space for dialogue and knowledge sharing among researchers from around the world, and working towards establishing those common ethical principles and standards for AI development.
So instead of focusing on those narrow national interests, it's about trying to elevate the conversation and work together on the shared challenges and opportunities that AI presents.
Right.
But with so much at stake, with so much potential for both good and bad, it's hard not to feel a mixture of excitement and anxiety about the future of AI.
I understand.
I mean, what does the report say about the long-term implications of AI for humanity? What kind of future are we moving towards, and what role will CERN for AI play in shaping that future?
They present a cautiously optimistic outlook. They see the potential for AI to solve some of the world's toughest problems, but they also acknowledge those potential risks and the importance of responsible development. They envision a future where AI helps to enhance human capabilities, automates those mundane tasks, creates new opportunities for economic and social progress.
Right.
And ultimately helps us all to live longer, healthier, more fulfilling lives.
That's a vision that's both inspiring and a bit overwhelming to think about.
It is.
But it's also a reminder that the future isn't set in stone. It's something we create through the choices we make, the actions we take, and our commitment to using this powerful technology for the greater good.
Well said.
And I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive into the world of CERN for AI.
I agree.
It's been a fascinating journey exploring both the potential and the challenges of this transformative technology, and a reminder that the future is not something that just happens to us. It's something we actively shape.
We all have a role to play.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep shaping the future.